This episode is presented by Knack. Have you ever wanted or needed a bag for multi-purpose use, or a bag that you don't need to worry about your important items such as your phone or laptop? Then Knack Bags are the bag for you. Knack Bags are your everyday bag for work, travel, and leisure. Knack Bags come with a fully padded interior to keep your electronics safe. With its sleek design, organized interior, and professional appearance, it looks great at work or on the street and expands for more capacity when you need it. Get a Knack Bag today and stop worrying about how you look when carrying your life essentials. Use the code GAME and for a limited time, get a free TSA-approved lock with purchase. Just add the TSA lock to your cart with your Knack Bag of choice and use the code GAME, G-A-M-E, at checkout to get it for free.
This is Game On with Johnny Montalbano on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. And now, here's Johnny.
It's showtime, folks. Episode 3. Yes, episode 3 already of Game On here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, presented by Knack. I'm Johnny Montalbano with my bag. That's Nick Morganson with his bag. As we wrap up the month of March. Nick, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing good. March Madness has been great. We have baseball coming soon. We had a weird trade happen in the NFL. We have an interview for the first time on this show. This show's going to be great.
3 episodes in, folks, and we have an interview and we have a special announcement later on to tell you about. Yes, we're 3 shows in. No, the show's not canceled, so don't worry about that. We are just getting started here. Let's just put it that way. But Nick, we definitely do have a lot to discuss here in this episode. And of course, folks, you can plenty of ways to interact with us. You can get at us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. The show is at Game On ETB. Instagram, Game On _ETB. And personally, me at Twitter, Montalbano NY, Nick and Morganson Radio. And Nick, you'd said we got a lot to get to. We got a big, actually, story to talk about regarding New York sports in general. We're both Yankee fans. Big news in the last 5 days or so with New York City Mayor Eric Adams lifting the vaccine mandate restrictions for athletes. So that is going to be a big deal. I know you're a Nets fan, so we'll get into that in a little bit. Nick said we have an interview. We do. We have Hank Indictor from the Hitting for the Cycle podcast. He is going to join us a little bit later on to discuss baseball, the Yankees, the Mets, the lockout, how he feels about that, and also some other big storylines regarding baseball. You know, the crazy free agent frenzy that happened. So we will get into that. And as I said, we also have a special announcement. We also have a little bit of football news. Tyreek Hill got traded to the Dolphins as that madness continues as well. So we will get into all that. But Nick said it, March Madness still ongoing. So we're going to tip things off here with the NCAA tournament, which went from the Sweet 16 down to the Final Four. A lot of great storylines entering this past weekend, and we still have a lot of great ones entering this upcoming Saturday and ultimately into the national championship game on Monday, April 4th. But, Nick, we get it going here. I want to spend a couple of minutes here to start really talking about one of the storylines that really took over the tournament in a great way, and that was 15th seed St. Peter's, which was able to, I obviously did not have them picked in the first round. I thought they had tough matchups going up against Purdue. I had mentioned that I felt like they were going to struggle against their size, and boy, they actually did quite the opposite. They ran wire to wire against them. But when you look at St. Peter's and when you look at all these matchups from the past week, what is your big takeaway, starting with St. Peter's here?
So what's so crazy about this? One, and I think I mentioned it last week, no NBA projected athletes off this roster whatsoever. That's what's so crazy about this. When you look at this tournament over the years especially going from 64 to 68 teams, which is a whole other thing you and I can discuss because we think it's ridiculous that they keep expanding the tournament. It's kind of like the expansion of the MLB playoffs. Like they have to keep adding teams because they feel like they have to keep making more money and more money and more money. And you and I discussed this, by the way, because I think TBS, TNT, CBS, didn't they like double their ad revenue since the pandemic? So they made their money and then some. So, but when I look at St. Peter's, one in our region in New Jersey, it's one of the smallest colleges, I think, to compete in the tournament, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
So this college, St. Peter's, benefited in a ton because I think they got, I want to say, 800 million like out of it. It was a crazy number that they received. Now they're going to be able to expand on their program, expand on their college, which was basically a community college in a sense, even though it's considered a bigger college. And they're beating teams like Kentucky and Purdue and Murray State. Like these teams are huge.
Yeah, they were showing how I think the size of the school compared to Kentucky, it was like one student for every like 21,000 students, something like that in Kentucky. But it's part of the beauty of the whole tournament in general because it's so hard to predict the tournament because these schools never play each other because of the whole conferencing and everything else, and it's a single elimination. So at any moment, a great moment, and that's what you had. And I think one of the things you noticed when you were watching St. Peter's games is how calm their coach Holloway was. You know, even when they were faced with some adversity at times, he had remained calm when it was coming down the stretch. You never saw any panic, any frustration, or anything like that. And you always could tell in his interviews, you know, how calm and how excited he was at the end when he got those wins. So it was a great story. When they were going up against North Carolina, I thought I gave them a chance because one of the things, if you're watching North Carolina, we're going to talk about them in a moment, but North Carolina's free throw shooting had not been great the entire tournament. And St. Peter's, one of the things they were able to do in very clutch situations was make their free throws. And
and I wanted to ask you about this as well. The free throw percentages in the college game, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about here, are a lot different than they are in the NBA, where you look at some of these kids, they can't shoot free throws. It's crazy to me. In the NBA, you have guys that, I mean, you have the very few, if you go back in the day when you had Shaq in the league who was shooting less than 50%, but you don't really see that anymore. When you see guys enter the NBA, they have to make their free throws or else they're not going to stay on the court. You look in the college game, they have no choice. They're trying to get from college to the NBA. Some kids are shooting 50%.
And another thing about that too, not only is it the free throw shooting, Nick, how about the 3-point shots? How many of those did you see have you seen in this tournament? And you know, these guys, and I hate to say it, but you almost can go back. It's like the Stephen Curry rule, you know, because Curry was doing that at Davidson, and he has now transformed the game of basketball, not only in the NBA, but in college. So now you see all these guys shooting threes. And when the teams start falling behind, they start getting desperate. And that's something you did see out of St. Peter's when they were playing North Carolina. You know, they fell behind early and were trying to play catch up, and they kept shooting threes. I saw that in the Houston-Villanova game where all Houston was doing was shooting threes, trying to play catch up. And I got to tell you, at times that was hard to watch. It's almost become like how the basketball has become, in that it's become an outside shot game. Now, the difference between college basketball and the NBA is you actually see the teams in college take the whole shot clock down. And in the NBA, it seems like they go right down the court, and first time they get a shot, they shoot it up. That's just the transformation of the game. So, yeah, it feels like at times that, you know, free throw shooting, it's fundamental basketball. These guys don't, you know, do well there, and then they don't do their threes, and it changes the game at that point. But you know, nevertheless,
you're talking about like Phoenix Suns basketball in the NBA back in the day, not now, where when Mike D'Antoni was the head coach of the organization, his theory was essentially get the ball up in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock in the NBA, which was dumb because how can you determine a shot in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock? You can't do that. In the college game, like you just said, you notice that they're taking up, 15, 20 seconds of the shot clock before they're putting a shot up. Now, I think I said this to you the other day. I think St. Peter's ran out of gas. I think that was just it.
I think they were running out of gas, and they were playing a North Carolina team who had a couple of great scores that they hadn't seen in any of the other matchups. I mean, they'd scored some good team basketball, but they hadn't seen any dominant scorers like we've seen with the Tar Heels have. And they've run into a team that's been hot. I mean, I know St. Peter's had a great run, but North Carolina's had a great couple of weeks even before the tournament started. And, I haven't gotten many things right about this tournament, Nick. In fact, here's a copy of my bracket, and I did this during my Monty moment. I'm going to do this to you now. This is what I did to my bracket in the first couple of days and continue to do. I mean, not only was my bracket busted on day 1 and 2, it was destroyed, and it's still been destroyed. And I put this out, and I've said this. I haven't gotten many things right about this tournament. But I will take pride in saying this. North Carolina, to me, is a team that I had going pretty far. And it's very rare in the college basketball world to have a team that gets hot at the right time to go pretty far. But you're seeing it here. It works in some other sports. I don't think it really works in basketball, even in the pro game. But in this situation, the way that North Carolina is playing, to me, were in a favorable bracket because they ended up playing Baylor, who to me was not. I'm not saying they weren't worthy as a 1 seed, but they were the most vulnerable number 1 seed, and they were down 3 of their top guys when they played them. And Carolina's had a couple of very good offensive players that have been playing hot. They've been able to make their threes. But their free throw shooting has been suspect. That's what I was talking about earlier. That'd be their one thing that I would be concerned about.
Well, what's interesting about the bracket as well, like if you look back to the old historic, I look at Davidson, I look at Loyola, Chicago. That's what kind of like the whole St. Peter's thing reminded me of, by the way. And you brought up Curry before with Davidson, totally transforming the game in that regard. It was so weird to me. First of all, anyone who didn't have Kentucky in the first round, first of all, I think you're fully you-know-what. If you didn't pick Kentucky, you're not picking Kentucky against St. Peter's in the first round? Are you kidding?
Not only that, I mean, Kentucky to me was a Final Four team. I was thinking when we were talking right now, I thought we'd be talking about Kentucky in the Final Four, or at least in the Elite Eight, if not the Final Four for sure, if not even possibly playing for the championship because of that bracket, and the way that they've been. But yeah,
anyone who doesn't,
I believe it was 98.6% of brackets did have Kentucky over St. Peter's, and even that is a little suspect. I think it could almost be like 100%. But
right, that's less than 2%. Like I said, there was only less than 2% left that had perfect bracket, which shocked me completely when they said even under 2% had perfect brackets. I was like, what do you mean? Kentucky was one of the top teams up there with Gonzaga. By the way, Gonzaga completely trashed the bed.
They had a very rough go of it. I mean, I had them winning the championship, and they struggled throughout this entire tournament. I mean, they got into the Sweet 16, but even there, they had struggled against Memphis, and Arkansas, a team that I didn't have going far. I had Arkansas out in the first round. That was one of my 6 double-digit upsets, and again, I had the right idea, just not the right teams. I had Vermont beating them, but give Arkansas credit. They got there. They got to the Elite Eight where they ended up losing to Duke. But yeah, Gonzaga. And how about also in this Sweet 16, Arizona going down? So a lot of people's national championship that they had between Gonzaga and Arizona, and I know a lot of people that actually had picked Arizona to win the whole thing, that was done not only in the same round, but almost the same night.
Yeah, this whole tournament was basically the term of what I like to call upside down, where basically no one knew what was going to happen. There were more upsets in this year's tournament than in the past couple of years. And St. Peter's going as far as they did, being, first of all, I think it's the first time in history a 15 seed made it to the Final Four, or the Elite Eight, excuse me, the Elite Eight. Come on, you have to admit it's exciting. And by the way, anyone who said that it wouldn't have been exciting to see Duke versus St. Peter's in the Final Four, that would have been unreal.
It would have been epic. I mean, we got an epic matchup already, but can you imagine St. Peter's going against Duke, Holloway against Coach K and the Cinderella story? I mean, it was a win-win regardless. Yeah, it was disappointing the way that St. Peter's bowed out, but I agree with you, Nick. I think they just ran out of gas. And, watching that game, Carolina got past them, got out to a quick start, and then they never looked back. I think they were playing catch-up the entire game. I mean, they were showing when Carolina jumped out to a 7-0 lead. That was the biggest deficit that St. Peter's had in the entire tournament, which just goes to show how great they've been.
I also think it's inexperience because they're not used to getting this far in the tournament. Who would have thought they would have gotten past the first round, let alone the Elite Eight and possibly the Final Four?
Inexperience, and then other teams will scout you, and they will find a way to expose your strength. And that was it too. If St. Peter's getting to the free throw line was part of their strength, and they weren't really able to do that as much, especially when they were down behind. So they ended up having to hoist threes and play catch up the entire game. So, you have to give St. Peter's a ton of credit for getting this far. It definitely puts them on the map. And now, looking at the future for them, this is part of the thing too, is now they're talking about that coach, Shereen Holloway, possibly going to Seton Hall, because we know the Seton Hall coach went to Maryland. And that's part of the thing too. Your success can only, it shows that, maybe this head coach is for real and maybe I want him on another team. So look, it's a wonderful story. It was a great local thing for the New York, New Jersey area. I mean, as somebody who's lived on Long Island my first 25 years of my life, we don't have a lot of college sports to talk about. College football is not a big thing. Basketball, I mean, I know you've got St. John's. I know you've got Syracuse, but even though that's in upstate New York, but you really don't have a storyline. Seton Hall maybe, but you don't really have much to talk about. So St. Peter's putting them on the map was a great story. And now you wonder what this means for them going forward.
And then also you have the other side of the matchup as well with Jay Wright and Villanova. You have and then you have the Jayhawks, and you have them, and it's, I don't know. Everyone was saying Jay Wright was getting like a raw end of the stick, like because he couldn't figure out how to win in the tournament. He would get close, not win. I mean, I almost could see Villanova be the favorite on that side of the matchup.
Well, the tough thing about that was when you look at that region, everybody was talking about Arizona, and I don't think they really were giving Villanova a chance. And you have to give Villanova any Jay Wright team a chance because they've had as much success in the last decade as any college basketball team. They've had 2 championships. Right now, we're shaping up as we're looking at a possibility of a rematch from the 2016 championship against North Carolina, which we'll get to our preview in just a second here. But Jay Wright, even though the Villanova team doesn't produce a lot of NBA talent, Jay Wright's an excellent coach who gets the best out of his players. And the way that they've been, they got past Delaware, they got past Ohio State, they beat Michigan to get to this point, and then they beat Houston in a I have to say, that Houston-Villanova game, I watched the whole thing, was a tough watch because, both teams were missing a lot of shots, but Villanova had hung in there against a very fancy Houston team that got to this point. They beat Arizona, which a lot of people didn't see coming, to get into the Elite Eight. But Villanova,
a lot of people had Houston as a favorite, didn't they?
In that matchup, yes. But
But I thought I read in general some people were giving them small odds to win the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly possible as a 5 seed. I mean, because when you look at that side, all the talk was about Arizona. That's really what it came down to. So Houston might have been, could have been a favorite, but maybe it was just a bad draw. But Arizona, I mean, people were thinking Arizona better than Gonzaga. So when they both went down on the same day, those 2-1 seeds, it definitely shook everything up some more. But I love the way that Villanova has been playing here, and I think they got a pretty good chance against Kansas. And then, as we've talked about, Kansas gets past. They've had a pretty favorable route to the Final Four here, Nick. They got past Texas Southern, they got past Creighton, got over Providence, and then they played. That matchup against Miami of Florida, a 10 seed, was a tale of 2 halves because Miami got off to a good start, and then the second half, Kansas completely bared down, outscored Miami 47-15 in the second half to get into the Final Four. And so, I don't think Kansas was the number one seed that people thought was going to be left, or the last number 1 seed remaining, but they are. And you look at it now, and now we've got ourselves a Final Four matchup of a pair of Final Four games that are going to be very, very interesting. But I think obviously we have to talk about probably the most epic of them all, and that is Duke and North Carolina. Real quick, let me just mention about Duke because we haven't given them a lot of love here in this segment. But They got past Cal State Fullerton, got through Michigan State, beat Texas Tech, and then got past Arkansas. Arkansas was giving a lot of teams trouble. And so how about this storyline, Duke and North Carolina in the Final Four? I mean, you couldn't have scripted it any better way. Coach K's last tournament run, and now looking for some revenge against North Carolina, who, just spoiled his last home game at Cameron Indoor Stadium. And I tell you, this is going to be a very, very interesting, great matchup, because as I've been on the North Carolina, train here, because they've been playing some red hot basketball, and you have to think that
close games.
Yeah. But one thing North Carolina's been able to do is they've been able to score. They've got great scores. But like I've said, if this is a close one down the stretch here, I look for that issue with Carolina's free throw shooting. And that's why I actually did give St. Peter's a chance against them. But, boy, this is a tough one to look at. But if I had to pick it, which I will, I'm going to take North Carolina because of just how hot they've been. And I know the revenge factor. I know Duke's going to come out very strong. They want revenge for, Coach K's last home game being spoiled from the second half run from Carolina. But I just like the way they've been playing. And Duke, nothing against them, but I just still have a tough time figuring them out. They've had some great moments, but I feel like they are very polarizing. But I like North Carolina to get back to the championship game.
I think, like you said, I think Duke's going to come out on fire, considering that it's Coach K's last game. I think they're going to play a good first half. And then I think, like you said, North Carolina has been riding the momentum. It seems like they've been killing teams all the way up to the Final Four.
And like I said, yeah, and that game against Baylor, which I know you and I were talking about, talking on the phone as that game had happened, I think that's kind of a fluke, because after that flagrant foul and Manic being out, their game changed totally. And how does it not when one of your top scorers goes out for the rest of the game? But they've got a couple of great scorers and depth on that team. So I think North Carolina is gonna make it into the championship.
I think, like I said, I think Duke's gonna come out and absolutely kill the first half, and then I think they're gonna run out of gas. Because I think they've been playing on house money this whole tournament, momentum wise. I think Carolina wins, at least on that side of the bracket. I do.
And I think I agree with you. I think Duke does get off to a fast start, but I also think there's a lot more pressure on them because of the situation with Coach K. I mean, can you imagine if, just for a second here, if Duke not only loses their final home game to North Carolina, but then Coach K's last game in general is a loss to North Carolina in the NCAA tournament?
In the Final Four heading to the championship.
Yeah, no less. But yeah, I mean, can you just think about that? I mean, Coach K might have to even reconsider the whole retirement piece, because there's no way you think of his storied career he wants to end it with back-to-back losses against the rival Tar Heels. And I went out and watched the game with a friend on Sunday, and I'll tell you, I mean, it's already picking up steam down here, the Duke North Carolina rivalry. So that is going to be an epic one. If the game was not on TBS, Nick, and you and I had spoken about this too, if the game was not on TBS Saturday night, we would be talking about this game being the highest rated game in college basketball history. And I really do believe that, because unless the team's really in the championship, the national championship game is a hard watch for a lot of people, because it's late on a Monday night. I mean, this is a Saturday night in prime time with the best rivalry in possibly all of sports, definitely in college basketball, but possibly in all of sports, playing each other for a spot to go to the national championship game. And Coach K's last run at this, I mean, the storylines here just sets up for it being being epic and historic, and yet the game's on TBS. We know why, but
I think the Duke North Carolina game is going to rate better than the national championship. I do.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, if this game was on CBS, you'd be talking about it an all-timer. And
I mean, you have to remember one thing, though, which I brought up to you, is TBS is cable. TBS is cable, which means not everybody has it. So there are going to be some people who are not going to be able to watch the game.
The bars and restaurants will definitely get a higher rating for sure. They'll do very well in this matchup. So I'm going to take North Carolina against Duke, and then in the other Final Four matchup, which starts at 6:09 Eastern on Saturday, Villanova and Kansas. You know what? The way Villanova's been playing, it's nothing against Kansas, but Kansas at times has struggled. I like Jay Wright in this spot in Villanova to make it back. They
So
don't
do I.
perform NBA talent, but I think we're looking at another rematch of a championship game here between Villanova and North Carolina. If you remember the last time they met, it was an unbelievable finish where Carolina rallied to tie it in the final seconds, and then they went down the court, and Jenkins hits that three at the buzzer for Villanova to win. I remember watching that whole game, and that was a classic one.
Yeah, that was epic. That was
16.
epic in a lot of ways, and I'm with you. I think that Villanova goes back, and we see North Carolina Villanova in the national championship game.
Yeah, and I will do a Monty moment about that championship game on Monday, so keep it locked in here to the Empty the Bench podcast network. So some great storylines had happened, some great ones still to continue here in this tournament. Just 3 games remaining, 5 days from now. When we're with you next week, we will have a champion to discuss. But switching gears here, big deal in the New York market this past week was New York City Mayor Eric Adams lifting the vaccine mandate for athletes and Broadway performers. And obviously, since we're the sports show, we're going to focus on the athlete side of things. Now, Nick and I are both Yankee fans, and Nick's a Net fan. I'm not, but I'll be fair and talk about in this regard. This is a pretty interesting deal because, we had talked about it on this show and on other shows past, that originally the reports were that Mets and Yankee players would not, it was the Kyrie Irving rule, the Mets and Yankee players would not be allowed to play home games. With opening day now a little over a week away, we would find out who on the Yankees is not vaccinated, and we kind of have an idea. We know Anthony Rizzo is not for obvious reasons, but now this helps obviously Kyrie Irving and the Nets. This helps in the fact that Aaron Judge, who we assume by his comments is not, and we know Joey Gallo's not, so it does help them. Now, it doesn't take away from the fact that these guys cannot travel to Canada, and that could be very significant here, Nick, because the way things are trending right now, especially with the Brooklyn Nets, they could be trending towards a Toronto Raptor playoff game, either a series or possibly a play-in tournament spot. And the Yankees can't have their players go up to Toronto and take on the Blue Jays, who right now look to be the favorite in the AL East. So first things first, let's focus on the team that's playing now, and that's the Brooklyn Nets. We saw Kyrie make his home debut this season against the Hornets this past week. Didn't have a great shooting night, but now that he's in the fold to play home and away and play consistently, you as the Net fan, Nick, how is this going to affect them coming down the stretch of the season?
I mean, it should help them, right? Because he hasn't been able to play home games. It's a weird situation because he hasn't played at home all season. So what are you supposed to do? Now you have momentum on your side. You would hope they would play better because now you can have Kyrie and KD on the court together playing, but Kyrie has not been playing at home. It's a whole different thing. He probably had nerves on against the game for Charlotte. I think they lost 119 to 110. That was a big loss for them, by the way, because they're still trying to make sure they secure a spot. I'd rather they not play in the play-in game because that, you know how that format goes. It's one and done and out.
Single elimination. Yep.
But you know what would have made this whole thing go away, and we wouldn't have had to fight this whole thing? Get the shot. Get the vaccine. Now, I know it's a little controversial talking about the vaccine, but if you really just want to end this whole nonsense, just get it. That's all it takes.
Common sense, Nick, but common sense hasn't really prevailed here in the last 2 years with COVID, unfortunately. But yeah, I look at it from as an NBA fan. I'm a Knicks fan, but I look at it from the NBA perspective, and I think chemistry is very, very important when it comes to basketball. You can have all the talent and the star players and all that stuff, but chemistry is a big deal. And I do give Steve Nash a lot of credit because it's been very difficult for him to handle this team this year when you've had to juggle rotations because Kyrie has not been able to play. It definitely should help the Nets, like you said. We're going to see though now because Kyrie's only played 20 or 21 games this entire season, so it should help them. That's for sure. And right now, the way they are right now the 8th spot in the East, and the Bulls and the Raptors are So this play-in tournament, it would be, how does it work here? It goes the first 6 get in, and then it's 7, 8, 9, 10, 7, 10, and then 8, 9 would be
Yes.
play-in tournament. Okay, so when you look at that, so right now the Nets are the 8th spot. They would take on the Hornets. They would host that game if the playoffs started today. So yeah, it's a big deal that this mandate was lifted for Kyrie. So yeah, so
It's like you said, as long as they don't play Toronto in Toronto, then it's fine, at least for now.
Yeah, I mean, that's still certainly possible that they could play them in the postseason if they get out of the play-in tournament. And you have to think if they have all their big players in there, that they have a chance. But, they're only, and probably this is because of the whole Kyrie thing, they're only 16-20 at Barclays Center, and they're 23-16 on the road.
Which is weird because you wouldn't think a team would be better on the road than they would be at home. But I guess if you could play all the road games, then it makes a difference.
For sure, yeah. So, yeah, it's a tricky spot, and the Raptors right now them and the Bulls are tied at 43-32, but I believe the Bulls have the tiebreakers. So right now, there's still a possibility they could take on the Raptors come playoff time, and we don't know if Toronto is going to lift their restrictions by the time the playoffs start. I mean, that would be a couple of weeks from now. It's hard to say. So, yeah, it's a big deal here for the Nets that they get Kyrie now to play now every day, and I think it helps them because now they can actually play the same kind of basketball instead of having to change it up a million different ways. So it definitely can only help the Nets, you would think, more than hurt them, as far as Kyrie coming back and this rule. And then the other story, see, the Mets, it doesn't really affect because the Mets don't go to Toronto. So there's nothing really to say there. But as far as, the Yankees go, we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago with the whole Aaron Judge bit. And, this is a big deal because Judge, he's going to be a free agent. I don't think he's going to sign a contract before the season starts. But if he is truly not vaccinated, and we'll know because the Yankees go to Toronto. Their first time, I believe, is in May. It's a big. It's big because right now the way that this AL East is shaping up to be, it's going to be Toronto, Yankees, Boston, and Tampa. One probably all competing for a couple of spots. And I know you have the expanded playoffs and stuff, but imagine that final spot comes down to a game or two, and Judge cannot play in Toronto.
It's going to come down to that. I guarantee you it's going to come down to that because, again, he's being a jerk. Sorry. He is being a jerk about not getting the vaccine. We've said this many times. You could tell when he was speaking to the New York media in spring training, his initial press conference, he was mamboing around the answer instead of just saying, I'm not vaccinated. I am vaccinated. I'm going to get vaccinated. I'm just not going to deal with it right now. What's that?
I mean, that's what annoys me the most about all this is how hard is it to say no? I mean, if you just come out and straight no, I'm not vaccinated. I mean, look, we would. It's easier. Yeah, probably wouldn't be happy, especially now with this whole thing still with Canada. But it would create a little bit of a better optic instead of dancing around the question. If you dance around the question, we know you're not vaccinated. Because why would you dance around the question if you are vaccinated? Look,
right.
Look, Aaron Judge, if you're watching the show right now, listen to me, look at me, and I'm going to stare into the camera and let me tell you my status. You ready? I am fully vaccinated with a booster shot. Okay? And I wasn't forced. My job does not force me to get it. It's my choice, and I got it. I've had COVID twice now. I run 3 different routes with my job throughout the week. I'm in 15 stores throughout the week. I do it to be safe. All right? If you don't want to be vaccinated, that's fine. But just say it. Look, we know the situation with Anthony Rizzo. Anthony Rizzo is not vaccinated because of his whole cancer situation. And that's understandable. We get that. But if you don't want to be vaccinated, and look, that's your choice. I have no problem if people want to be or whatnot. What I have a problem with is people that are dancing around this question. It is a yes or no answer.
Ask Aaron Rodgers.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, when that situation came out, Aaron Rodgers should have been suspended because he lied about his vaccination status and put his fellow teammates and his players and his coaching staff in danger.
Right.
Aaron Judge is not putting his teammates and stuff in danger, But let's
Well.
put it this way: he's going to put his team in danger if he is not vaccinated and he can't play in Toronto, and the Yankees are going to be competing for one of those expanded playoffs. Because I think we're going to talk about this on our baseball preview show next week, Nick. But the way this team is structured right now, I think they're going to compete for a playoff spot, but I think they're barely going to get in. And if it comes down to a game or two, and he doesn't play those Toronto games, and they could use his bat, we're going to go back and look at this moment.
If he doesn't play, say he doesn't get the vaccination, he doesn't play in any Toronto games, you might as well say the Yankees are going to go under 500 at that point. Because if he doesn't play in the half of the 18 games that they play with the rival in division, so 9 games, I think they're going to lose all 9 games if he doesn't play.
I think they'll be able to squeeze out a couple. See, I think the Yankees are still good enough to make it into the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be like at the top of it like before. And they haven't really been at the top for the last few years here. So, and I just think the way this team is structured, I think they need all their guys they can get. Now, because let's be honest also, if Aaron Judge is not playing, who else do they have? You're going to go down to the minors or somebody like that and get like Ryan Lamar or somebody like that up here. You're really not going to do that.
Are you trusting Stanton at this point? I'm not.
Well, see, Judge and Stanton are the same kind of player. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to trust Stanton to be playing more outfield this year. And I know the Yanks have talked about that, but that's still
that's a giant mistake, in my opinion, putting him in the outfield.
Well, the problem is you have a lot of DHs and a lot of outfielders on that team too. That's why I say I think this, and we're going to talk about this with Hank in a couple of minutes here. I think the way this team is structured from an offensive and defensive standpoint, I think it's okay. I think it'll survive. It's not great, and I don't think it's good enough to win a division here. So, but in a game, in a situation where every game is going to matter, you need every one of your players to play as much as possible. Let's be honest. If you look at last season, Nick, Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton carried the Yankees last year. They had an underperforming year from almost everybody in that lineup except those two.
And they were hurt, both of them, at one point.
Yeah, they missed a little bit of time. That's been Judge's biggest problem has been his health. But think about something like this: if he's not vaccinated, and you wonder if he's not vaccinated and stuff, and they go out and miss this, how does this affect his future with his contract negotiations?
Well, that's another thing we spoke to Hank about. I think he wants a 7-year contract, like Aaron Hicks got. Which, by the way, that was probably the worst deal now if you look at it, because Aaron Hicks hasn't stayed healthy at all. So
I think he's looking at Chris Bryant.
Chris Bryant.
Age 30, getting 7 years and $182 million.
Oh, okay, but Chris Bryant has been healthier. Chris Bryant is more valuable. I hate to say this as a Yankee fan, but Chris Bryant can bring more to the field than Aaron Judge can right now.
Playing multiple positions, I would have taken Chris Bryant over Josh Donaldson.
Right. We talked about that as well. If you're going to pay Josh Donaldson $23 million a year, I would have rather have had Chris Bryant.
And we'll see. Yeah, it's this is a very tricky spot here. And I guess we'll know in May, unless Canada decides to change the policy by May. But right now, that's not looking like that. So
with the new variant, and I'm not trying to get political or about the virus or whatever, but with the new variant coming out, there's no way that rule is changing now or by May.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't plan to be an expert. I think part of the problem with the whole COVID in general is I think people have tried to be experts when when nobody in general really is an expert on this thing. This is stuff that we're still learning about. I'll be honest with you. I've been dealing with a post-COVID like problem since the pandemic's started, and I read an article about it online, and I saw one of my doctors that I had, and they still can't really determine themselves if the news about the study is actually accurate or not.
The point is that COVID is not over. It's not over. It's not going to be over for a few years, in my opinion. Like, we're going to be dealing with, whether it's new variants or repercussions, we're going to be dealing with this for a few years. So just people need to figure out, are they going to get vaccinated? Okay, fine. If not, Okay, fine. You're just going to be dealing with more repercussions in the long run if you don't.
Yeah, but we'll see. It's going to create quite a storyline. But I guess if you are a Nets fan and you're a Yankees fan, if you're going to that opening day of the Yankees on April 7th, now in all likelihood you'll be able to see Aaron Judge because of the whole restriction. Now you'll be able to see Kyrie Irving as the Nets finish out the string at Barclays Center on the road, and most of their home games, the Nets down the stretch, are at home. So it's definitely hopefully gives them a little bit of momentum going into the playoffs. And obviously we'll talk a lot more about that as we get closer. But speaking of Aaron Judge and the Yankees, we had the great opportunity to talk to Hank Indictor from Hitting for the Cycle about the 2022 season, the Mets, the Yankees, and the lockout and everything in general. And here's how that went. We are a little over a week away from opening day in baseball, something that a couple of weeks ago we didn't think was going to happen, but it is here, and no better time to talk about it but with our special guest, Hank Indictor from the Hitting for the Cycle podcast, as well as Big Blue Avenue and others as well, and he's kind enough to join us here on Game On. Hank, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, guys. How about you?
We're doing great. Thanks so much for joining us. So, you host Heading for the Cycle, which is going to be entering its second season now. And, you and I have spoken in the past before. We didn't think this was even going to happen this year because of the whole lockout bid. So you personally, how do you feel going into this season after the lockout? Is there still a little bit of a stain of the lockout in you going into this year?
A little bit. I can't deny that because the way the whole negotiation stuff played itself out, that still doesn't leave a great taste in my mouth. But at the end of the day, to say that I am relieved that baseball is back would be the understatement of the year, because let's not forget, at the end of the day, I have to remember, I don't root for Manfred and the other bigwigs in the front office. I root for the players on the field like the Mike Trouts and the Albert Pujols and pretty much you name it.
So what was more entertaining to you, the insiders going in and out of the MLBPA meetings, or Rob Manfred practicing his golf swing and the AP camera catching him?
Honestly, I think they were both pretty entertaining, but for all the wrong reasons, if I'm being honest with you guys. I think Manfred was entertaining because that idiot goes up to the podium with that little smile on his face, and he's like, "Oh, we're probably going to be in a lockout. We have to cancel some games. No big deal." And I'm like, just shut up.
Just announce.
And make no mistake, I'm not saying he's the main guy at fault, because at the end of the day, we know he sides with the owners. That's just the reality of the situation. The owners are the one that I think are the real people at fault. You can partially blame the players too, but at the end of the day, Manfred also knows he's pretty much out of a job if he doesn't sign with those schmucks. So there you go.
Do you think though, with all the, we've spoken about this before, with all the optics of the 99 days with that lockout, whether it was owners or players or whatnot, that this is going to have a damaging effect on the sport?
Yeah, and who knows how long it's going to take. It could be years before it's really resolved. And I hate to say this, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of stadiums that are going to take a long time to really sell out a game. I don't know about New York necessarily, and probably not other cities such as Boston or LA, but for the general city that has casual fans, for the front runners, those are the ones you really got to worry about.
Now, one of the things I look at when they said some of the teams voted no on the salary projections and all that stuff, the Angels, and I look at Artie Moreno. I'm sure you saw that headline come out, and that was the oddest thing because technically you're in a market in Los Angeles. Did that confuse you when the Angels and Artie Moreno turned down the number?
Well, yeah, I mean, look how much money that guy has spent on guys that haven't even done well. How on earth is that going to affect a guy like him? And he's not even the only owner that confused me, actually. You want to know another one? Chris Ilitch. You guys remember when Mike Ilitch was still alive and he was owning the Tigers? Mm-hmm. Look how much money he spent on the Miguel Cabreras, the Prince Fielders, and he would spend whatever stupid money possible towards the end to try to win a championship for the Tigers. Now, ultimately, we all know how that worked out, but you would think that Chris, being the inheritor of I think it was Little Caesars was the franchise that they owned. They own the Fox Theater, they own the Detroit Red Wings, they own the Tigers. That's another name. It's you would think that with him and Moreno being there, it's how would that affect those guys? They're filthy rich. that's pennies to them. But it's another one of those things that just confuses the heck out of me.
I'll throw you one more team. You could say the White Sox owner as well, who owns the hockey team, and I think he owns some media outlets. Same
He
thing.
owns the basketball team. He owns the Bulls.
Oh, was it the Bulls?
That's
okay.
the Wirtz. That's the Wirtz family, the Blackhawks.
Oh man, Hank Indictor from Heading from the Cycle joining us here on Game On. All right, so Hank, turning our attention to the stuff on the field, and now we're going to have the universal DH this year in both leagues, which I think was inevitable. But let's turn our attention to on the field, and I think no better place to start than with our Yankees, and I can say our Yankees because all three of us are Yankee fans, and they are a team that coming off that wild card loss against the Red Sox last season, and you look at them going into this year, and I think this is a team that's got a lot of question marks. I think one of the benefits they do have is another one of these new rule changes that we saw for this year, is that's the expanded playoff. Because right now, the way that they are constructed, Hank, in my opinion, I think right now they're going to be one of those expanded, those extra teams that are going to make it into the playoffs. We all know that the big move they really made was the trade for Josh Donaldson, and then I brought in Falefa, and they brought in Roarforth, their catcher, who may not be there on opening day, but that trade and their other pieces. What do you think about them and going into this year?
We talked about this on one of the episodes where we were pretty much the guest hosts on Review and Preview. I told you I wasn't necessarily opposed to that trade. I like the fact that they got a catcher who, granted, even though he's injured, he's going to be missing some time to start the season, he has the potential to be a lot better than Gary Sanchez. And Lord knows, if you talked about Gary Sanchez with me, I have had enough of that guy, playing behind the plate. It's not even his hitting that's the problem. The guy can't pitch frame. The guy doesn't go after pass balls. There's a reason why I've been wanting him gone. But you're getting a guy who might not replace him for a while, so that's still a bit of a question mark. But at least there's no more Gary Sanchez. So it's a trade-off, but that's the price you're paying. Second of all, I like that they improved the infield with Kiner Falefa because, remember, we pretty much didn't even have a shortstop. I know you can tell me Gleyber Torres, but yeah, there's a reason why I'm not even going to entertain that argument. And getting Josh Donaldson, while that could be a good fit for a lineup, there's one concern, and that's his health. So if there's one downgrade, it's him. Defensively, it's him after Gio Urshela. But I don't really think the Yankees necessarily got worse. I mean, again, you don't have Gary Sanchez anymore. That's great, but where's your other catcher? And now you have an infield that's probably going to be better. You did improve a little bit defensively, but at the same time, you still have a lot of guys who are all or nothing home run hitters. So I'm pretty much expecting more of the same. They'll be just good enough to get to the playoffs, especially now with the expanded playoff format. And then once you see all these good pitchers coming up, that's where you start to feel scared.
Well, I'll give you a frame of thought. If you're going to spend $23 million a year on Josh Donaldson anyway, I told Johnny that I think you were better off entertaining Chris Bryant. I know the deal is a lot. I know he went to Colorado, which still makes no sense to me whatsoever, considering that he's going to be the best hitter in the lineup. But I would have rather have spent the money on Chris Bryant than an aging Josh Donaldson at third.
I don't disagree. I mean, look, there's two ways to look at it. You could look at the fact that the Yankees filled 3 needs in that one trade, but at the same time, am I in love with the idea of paying $50 million to Josh Donaldson? Absolutely not. But I don't really disagree with that take. I personally am a big fan of Chris Bryant myself, so I would not be opposed to that at all.
And I would follow up also with, would you say it's irony that the trade kind of allowed the Twins to pick up Correa for the deal that they picked him up for?
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, when you look at the Yankees versus the Twins on the field competition-wise, we know who's been winning that battle, and it's been pretty one-sided. But for all of a sudden the Twins to come out and get Carlos Correa, that was unexpected. Not even so much that the Twins got him, but the years and the money. Because, everyone assumed that this guy was going to get a 10-year, $300 million contract. Now you're getting him for a 3 years, $105 million. Now, granted, we know there's opt-outs in that contract. So
First 2 years. Yeah.
for the first two. So he might not even be in Minnesota for very long, but it's been a long time since the Twins have gotten a big name free agent. And the only other big name free agent that they got that I can think of would have been Jack Morris, who pitched 10 shutout innings, Game 7 of the 91 World Series.
Absolutely. We're talking with Hank and Dick there. Hank, speaking of Chris Bryant, and it's a good transition here to talk about Aaron Judge, because, there's been, we have been speculation that he's not vaccinated based on his comments. And now the news that came out this past week with New York City Mayor Eric Adams being lifted the vaccine restrictions so he can play in home games, including the season opener on April 7th against the Red Sox. But as far as Judge goes, the big deal with him also is going to be that he's a free agent after the season. And just like Chris Bryant, he's going to be 30 when he enters free agency. So what do you think about Judge's future with the Yanks, not just because of the whole vaccine stuff, but because he is a free agent at 30 and the whole contract's with him?
I'm not even going to look at the other stuff with regards to the vaccine. I'm going to look at this from the total Yankees perspective. I think Judge wants to stay there. I think the Yankees want him to stay there. They see Judge as like another leader. I guess they see him as like the Derek Jeter type, the face of the franchise. And considering you have the judges' chambers, you see all the 99 jerseys in the stands, they would be absolutely foolish if they let him walk. Now, the idea of giving him a contract, a big one, does concern me, because as much as I love Aaron Judge, as much as the average Yankee fan, let's not forget that last year was one of the first years in a while that you really got to see a full season out of Aaron Judge where he didn't miss too much time. Now, granted, we know that the games that he's missed were because of freak injuries, but the narrative is still there. Like, he missed like a significant portion of games. And also there's the fact that he's entering his age 30 season. Like, how do you know that such a contract isn't going to come back to haunt the Yankees? And trust me, I take no pleasure in saying that whatsoever. I'm a big fan of Aaron Judge. He's one of my favorite players, and I would love for him to stay a long time. If there's any Yankee in the lineup that deserves to stay like his whole career, it's him. But I can't say that there's no yellow flags or even red flags if you even decide to sign him to that contract.
Now, do you think it was bizarre, the answer he gave in front of the New York media, no less, that he basically was mamboing the question of the vaccination? I know they weren't directly asking him about it, but they kind of were asking him about it, and he kind of just said, I'm not worrying about it.
I think he probably was hiding something, but again, I'm not really going to get into that. I think we know he might not have been, but that's neither here nor there. Like, the law's been put into place where like he can play games. Again, I don't even know for sure whether or not he was fully vaxxed or not. All I know is he's going to be playing. Fans are going to be seeing him, and I have my own opinions on it. So
I got it. Yeah,
and I guess we'll find out for sure if when he goes up to Toronto and plays the Blue Jays, and he can't even travel up there. We'll know soon enough, and we'll see what happens with the Yanks. But Hank, switching gears, talking about the other New York team real quick, the Mets, because they're another big storyline too. They bring in Max Scherzer, they bring in Buck Showalter to be manager. I saw an over-under on them from one of these sports books that has them at 90 wins this year. But given the moves that they made, even bringing in Chris Bassett to extend that rotation, and now their rotation is pretty deep, and you look at their lineup, and they're even getting Robinson Cano back. I don't know what he's going to be able to contribute to them, but considering all the moves that they've made, and even with Buck Showalter, what do you think about the Mets going into 2022?
I mean, look, if all goes well, this is a team that could potentially make a lot of noise, not so much in the division, but in the entire National League, especially if you've got Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer healthy. I mean, that's about as good as it gets right there. You got one of the best pitchers in the league coming back for a healthy season, and Max Scherzer, a future Hall of Famer. I can't even think of the last time the Mets got like a pitcher of that impact. Maybe Pedro Martinez, but I digress. It's a really good starting rotation, and now you add Chris Bassett into the mix. And now let's not act like this like is a trade that doesn't have any like yellow flags, because you gave up a top 10 pitching prospect, and then you went out and got Starling Marte, who he's in his age 33 season. I'm not so sure. I think that contract is going to get ugly, but that's a team that's going to win now. That's trying to win now. But with that being said, I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit skeptical about them because we've seen them in years past. We know how Francisco Lindor did in year one of that big mega contract deal. So I'm going to, like, I know a lot of people are going to hate this. People are going to be saying, oh, you're a Yankee fan. No, I legit think that there are a few yellow and possibly even red flags with regards to Mets. And let's not forget, they're in the same division as as the World Series champions. I know they lost Freddie Freeman to a rival in the LA Dodgers, but even Matt Olson isn't even a bad replacement. You're still getting a good production at first base. They still have a lot of their team remaining, and you look at how the Phillies improved their lineup. Now, I'm not saying that team's going to make any noise. I still have a little bit of questions about their pitching as well, but like what I'm saying is I don't think the Mets being like a great team is as sure of a thing as people are saying, but if everything goes right, then watch out.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Freddie Freeman because that contract and that whole situation was unique to me. First of all, they gave Matt Olson more money in Atlanta, which I guess because the younger player, I guess they want to keep him in Atlanta. That was a weird situation. And then the Dodgers, which I question them on how they did this contract. They're kicking money down the curb. The Dodgers of all teams are kicking money down the curb.
Never
really?
Seen that before.
I mean, I get it. Like, Freddie Freeman wanted the 6 year in Atlanta, and Atlanta didn't want to extend. I think he's 32, so it would have been 38 by the end of the contract.
Yeah.
But why are you not keeping your guy who's been with you? You rarely see players anymore that play one team in the majors. It doesn't exist anymore. So what do you think about the Freeman situation?
This is what I said when I did a few short videos with regards to the Matt Olson signing in regards to when Freddie Freeman went to the Dodgers. Like, I'm not against the idea of getting Matt Olson as a first baseman. Not at all. I think he's absolutely terrific. I think he's going to give you great numbers and some good pop in that lineup. The problem is you don't replace a guy like Freddie Freeman. This is one of the premier first basemen in Major League Baseball, and you're not even just replacing his bat. You're replacing the guy who is the absolute glue to both the clubhouse and like the team as a whole. This is a guy who will probably, in all likelihood, end up in Cooperstown. Even now, I still would imagine his number 5 is going to get retired by the Atlanta Braves, especially considering he contributed to a World Series. And after they traded for Olson, I said that the nightmare scenario would be if the Braves let him go to, say, the LA Dodgers. Because look, that's competition. That's a team that has been chasing you for the pennant for the past 2 years. And now you have a team that's already insanely talented, money-wise and roster-wise. Now you just got a guy like Freddie Freeman, and I don't care if he's going to be declining in the second half of that contract. They're always trying to win now. They're always trying to put themselves in the best position to win. How do you let that happen?
Well, I don't get it. I want to follow up with one more thing as well, and I brought this up to Johnny on my show, Empty the Bench. The Braves were $100 million in profit over the last year, winning the World Series. Yes. How the heck, being $100 million in profit, you're going to act cheap against the Dodgers for the contract? Someone hasn't answered that for me yet because I don't understand what the answer would be.
Right, and especially there's also the chance that you could have very well missed out on a potential like dynasty because you let Freeman go to the friggin' Dodgers. Like, and it's like, it just makes no sense. And if the Dodgers win 1 or 2 World Series championships because of this, then the Braves have no one to blame but themselves.
Certainly. Hank Indictor from Hitting from the Cycle joining us here on the show. So, Hank, considering all of considering the expanded playoff now, you're going to have a couple of extra teams in each league. What do you think that's going to mean in terms of a World Series? Who do you think is going to come out of the American League and the National League playing for the World Series this year?
Oh, gosh, this is going to be a tough one. I think the Astros will probably still make some noise, but considering there's going to be a few guys that they're missing, I don't know if they're going to be the factor that they've been for the past few years now that they no longer have Correa, who I think was probably one of the guys that you could argue was the glue to that lineup. And you could very well see the Seattle Mariners ending their long playoff drought. They had a really good offseason. Chicago White Sox are another team that's in the mix, but I think the one team that really scares me in the American League, and this isn't just coming from a Yankee fan, it's the Blue Jays. That team improved their pitching. You look at their infield, Yeah, they lost Marcus Semien to the Texas Rangers, and I think they were probably right to not pay him that much money. Yeah. But you also traded for Matt Chapman, and granted, I'm aware that his numbers have kind of gone down over the past few years, but now you're putting him in a lineup that features the likes of Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. Like, you're telling me that that's not going to scare you going forward, and this is an infield that has now just become more fundamentally sound. And you look at the pitching, sure, you lost Robbie Ray to the Seattle Mariners, but now you have Barrios, you have Kevin Gossman heading up 1 and 2, plus Hyun-Jin Ryu. That's a team that's definitely going to scare people. And if they can just add a bullpen, then they're pretty much all set. But that being said, they'll have some competition in that division for sure, mainly the Red Sox with their improved lineup.
I think the Blue Jays are the most dangerous team in the American League. That's just my opinion. With Vlad Jr., another year under his belt, that team is just unreal in so many ways. The one thing I want to get to before we finish, the MLB rule changes and the Shohei Ohtani rule. Now, this only benefits one team, right? I just want to make sure I get this.
Oh my gosh, I don't even get me started. It's so ridiculous. You're making a rule about pitchers, like putting a pitcher in and out of the lineup, but yet the only guy that it's really going to affect is Ohtani.
They want Mike Trout to win one.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
this is their way of promoting him, because you had mentioned about how Manfred doesn't promote his players. He's got Mike Trout, maybe the most talented player in the sport. He's got, like we said, Ohtani, who's not only like the most dynamic player in baseball, I'd say one of the most dynamic players in all of sports. And the only way we know about him now is the rule change, and that he's going to be on the cover of MLB 22, the show. So,
curse.
Yeah, that's it. But that's Hank Indictor from Let's see if I can get these all right. Hidden for the Cycle from Big Blue Avenue, part of the Review and Preview Network, and also from Game On. That's right, folks. Hank is going to be my new co-host for Game On here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. He'll be joining us for episode number 4 and beyond. So, Hank, I want to say thank you and welcome aboard, my friend.
Johnny, thank you so much for having me and bringing me on board with this. It is a pleasure. I am super stoked to be working with you guys going forward. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I can't wait. I've seen you guys in the chemistry on, I'll just say it, Review and Preview. I love the show. It's really good. And absolutely. I knew right away, that was your audition right there. I knew it. I just said I loved it, and we just had to make it happen.
This was his audition. I thought this segment was his. And I was just
Johnny, don't push it.
No, it's great. He passed, folks.
He passed.
But no, Hank, seriously, thank you so much, and we will see you, I guess, officially next week for episode number 4. But we'll also catch you on the Review and Preview Sports Network as well with Hidden for the Cycle and Big Blue Avenue, among many other things. But Hank, thanks again, and welcome aboard. And we will see you officially next week for show number 4.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, guys.
Cool. Thanks, Hank. And our thanks again to Hank Indictor from Hitting for the Cycle and, of course, Big Blue Avenue. And now, of course, officially Game On here on the ETB Network. He will officially be joining us for episode number 4 next Tuesday. So we're looking forward to having him. I know, Nick, you'll be on I guess we'll give you your bye week officially now and stuff like that. So looking forward to that. But got a few minutes left here. We'll wrap it up on some football talk. And Nick wanted to surprise me with something. So, Nick, talk to me about it.
So, breaking news. This just broke from Ian Rappaport. Playing Rule Proposal 1 was amended. Both teams are now guaranteed a possession in overtime, but it's now postseason only. It was approved. So, that means, remember how everyone was arguing that if you score a touchdown on the first possession of overtime, the game is over? That means it's over. That team wins. It's all about the coin toss. Well, scratch that. It's over. That means if you score a touchdown the first possession, that means the team gets an automatic possession to match on overtime.
So we're going half-hearted here, number 1, and number 2. Here's once again a case of the NFL being reactive and not proactive. They were reactive to remember when they were allowing the challenge pass interference calls, and now they're they're doing this too. Look, I said this at the time, and I still maintain it. I had no problem with the overtime rule, and I think now this is a case of the league being reactive because a lot of people were complaining about it. Look, I mean, I know this goes back to the playoffs with the Bills and the Chiefs. Look, if the Bills actually played an ounce of defense late in that game, it would not have even happened. So,
right.
And also the other thing, as I read this and think about this real quick, postseason only. Why is this not a consistent thing? Like if we're not doing this in the regular season and postseason, this should either be an all or nothing. And I don't like that.
And you know what?
And Nick, I'm sorry, I don't like this. This is another case of the NFL being reactive and not proactive. I didn't like when they had to challenge pass interference because it extended the game way too long. This is also a situation. Well, I get it. Postseason games are going to be long, but look, if a team's going to get in the postseason, I understand all the other sports. You know what? Both teams, for the most part, get an opportunity. I mean, I guess maybe not in hockey if a team wins the face-off and it goes right down and scores in 10 seconds. But I don't like this. I mean, it's a very freak thing, but it shouldn't happen. Really, the best overtime rule is in college football that both teams start on the 25-yard line and have a chance to score each. If you want to do that in the NFL, have them both start at like midfield or something and see what they could do. They'll probably both score because offenses are great. But I don't like this. It should be sudden death. And if we're going to make this rule change, also, let's make it throughout the entire year and not just part of the year.
I wish they had a better rule to determine who got the possession in overtime besides a coin flip. Like maybe based off like time of possession in the game could be considered who gets the ball in overtime rather than a coin flip. I do think that's a little unfair considering that I agree with you. This rule is dumb and stupid in every way. If you get the ball in overtime and you don't play defense, that's on you. You should lose if you give up a touchdown on the first possession. So, but I wish they would use, like I said, time of possession or maybe who scored the most touchdowns in regulation. That should determine the possession in overtime.
Nick, there is no perfect way to do it. And I don't think there is any way you can determine how, a team could score or not. I guess it's hard to say. The only thing I could think about that you could do instead of doing a coin toss or something is the team that has the possession last can maintain the ball. I'm not saying start it from the same spot because that would be that whole rule about, how both teams don't get an opportunity. Maybe you go with a kickoff, you kick off to the team that had the ball last instead of the coin toss. But there is no perfect rule. I hear everybody's trying to come up with solutions, and a lot of them don't help the problem. And I don't think there is a solution to all of this. It should have just been left the way it is. And watch in a couple of years that this happens and people are going to complain that it doesn't really work. Because really, so you're telling me that let's say we have a postseason game and one team does go out and score and then the other team gets the ball back. Their first pass, the first play of their drive is an interception or a fumble, and that's the game. I mean, what's the point? You're going to extend the game by one play? It should be a sudden death situation. So
right, and that's the problem. The problem is, like you said, the league is acting in a reactive way, not a proactive way. The NFL is so worried about their bottom line and not about what the fans think, because if they actually thought of what the fans think, they would leave the game alone. And like a couple of years ago, when they tried to put pass interference into replay, like that extended games, that extended times, more the fans are sitting in the stands for hours upon hours watching games. They don't care. They care about how the game looks from a reactive standpoint, not a proactive standpoint.
Yeah, so and it's going to confuse people because in the regular season when this happens, I mean, it's also the regular season. You have a 10-minute overtime instead of the 15 like you do in the postseason. So I don't like it. I really don't. As I said, I'm one of the few people that went on shows when this was being discussed and said that it should be left alone, and I maintain that. So,
I mean, they're so worried about teams' egos, like because it's unfair. Why didn't I win? I didn't get a possession because of the coin toss. I do think the coin toss is a problem. I don't think the rule is a problem. I think the coin toss is a problem, in my opinion.
couple of years, they'll develop like a coin machine gun that you can just shoot up into the air, and that'll determine. They don't want a human element. Just like the tip off in the NBA and college basketball, they don't want a human element with the referee. With the referee tipping the ball off. So
I do think it's funny.
Look, it's 2022. If you want a more balanced thing for the coin toss, then develop some sort of machine gun or something, and let the coin shoot up into the air, and then it'll come out that way. And then I guess the other choice will be, well, where are you going to put the coin? How are you going to put the coin into the machine? Are you going to put it tails down or heads down? I mean, come on. All right. And we're going to complain about the coin toss being unfair, then you know what? Then maybe we shouldn't even be playing professional sports then, all right?
I didn't mean it in that regard. I just meant that.
Oh, I just went off on that.
I know. I just meant that I feel like you use the elements of the game to determine the possession. That because you can look right up at the board and say, hey, all right, the team that deserves the advantage has the most touchdowns, or however they got to that score. That's all I was saying. Like the coin toss is stupid to begin with. You're giving both teams a 50-50 chance to earn a overtime possession.
Well, that's why I said if you wanted to get rid of that, then it should start with the team that had the ball at the last way before overtime. If you wanted to change it,
don't they have the coin toss determines the possession anyway. So whoever had it to kick off, I think the other team gets it in the second half anyway. So you should just keep going that way. So whoever had it in the second half, then in overtime, it should be the next team after that who gets the ball.
Or
I know
we're
arguing semantics.
I know, but yeah, it's just I don't like it, and this is something I've said for a while now. I know it's been talked about for a couple of years. The whole overtime rule. There's no perfect solution to this. I think it should have been left alone. And
I agree with you.
Well, and it might be brought back up again in a couple of years because that's what happened with the whole pass interference thing with the instant replay after that non-call against the Saints in the playoff game. The NFL decided to include instant replay, and then they realized that the games were taking too long. So, but keeping on the football here, Nick, real quick, a big trade, is the free agent trade frenzy continues in the NFL. It's died off a little bit, but late last week, big news about Tyreek Hill leaving the Chiefs, going to the Dolphins for 5 draft picks. And, this had developed so quick, Nick. It happened like within a span of 2 hours where you hear the first initial reports from Rappaport and Schefter that the Jets and the Dolphins are in on him because the Chiefs were trying to extend Tyreek Hill, and he declined it, and then they gave him the option to seek a trade. And when you look at it, I know Jet fans were starting, like you, I'm sure were excited at the possibility of it. But I'll say this, I think it was smart that the Jets did not get him. Now, I'm not saying that because Tyreek Hill would not have been a nice addition. I'm saying it because the Jets are not there yet. And to me, getting Tyreek Hill on the team doesn't take them to a postseason level. I think the ceiling at most for the Jets with Tyreek Hill would have been 6 wins. And I think they could still get there with what they're doing now. And I've liked what they've done this offseason, building up slowly but surely, whether it's been the additions of Uzama at tight end, re-signing Berrios. I feel like at times they've tried to go for the home run and they've struck out. So I like that they're building this up slowly. And in that whole conference, do you really think that they're going to make it into the playoffs just because of Tyreek Hill? No. So, and I would not have traded that much draft capital. Now, granted, the Jets do have the 4th and the 10th pick this year. So they could have offered one or both of those. But if
their
Jets,
deal,
I would not have done that.
Their deal was actually lesser than the Chiefs. I don't know if you saw that report.
It was fewer picks, but I think it was because it was also the 4th and or the 10th they were going to include in that, right?
Here's the issue. We talk about this in baseball as well. Do you protect the prospects? Do you believe in the prospects? Or do you go after the sure thing and trade the prospects away? This is the discussion we have in every sport. Now, in the NFL, it's a little different because if you have 2 first-round picks, especially top 10 protect, you think about holding on to them because you think you can get 2 top guys. If they had traded 1 instead of both, maybe we'd have a discussion there. But I agree with you at the same time that Tyreek Hill is not the quarterback that the Jets want. And I say that facetiously because Zach Wilson is not a quarterback I see in the future leading this team to a Super Bowl. I just don't.
Well, that would be my next comment too, is you would put a ton of pressure on Zach Wilson, and the jury is still up in the air about him. I mean, this is only his second year. With his third year? I've even lost count now. But
I think it's third year coming up.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, you want to put that much more pressure on him. I mean, he's had a lot of pressure because when he was out, you had Mike White step in and do great, which I think was kind of a fluke. But nevertheless, I mean, he stepped in and did quite a good job. So you really want to put that much pressure on him. As it is, the pressure now is going to really be on Tua down in Miami, because now you've brought in a capable backup in Teddy Bridgewater, and you now have Hill to go along with Jalen Waddle. They brought in a good offensive lineman in Armstead, who I think on the left side, he should be on the right side to protect Tua because of him being a southpaw. But I think it's almost a better fit for Miami because now they can absolutely see if Tua is the answer. And at times he's shown that he could be, and other times he hasn't. I mean, you have to remember the Dolphins started 1-7 and ended up rallying for a pretty nice season. So I think it's a better fit for Miami than it is the Jets in that regard. And also, it goes back to what we were talking about with the Yankees and big free agents and the trade with Donaldson. The names sound great. Tyreek Hill sounds great as a Jet. It's not a great fit though, and that's what I think the problem is with Tyreek going. If he was going to the Jets, is I just don't think it's the greatest fit in the world for the Jets. I think it's a better fit for Miami.
If you learned in the long run what goes on in New York with big names, and I hate to say this is going to hurt you too, the Knicks have done this over the years. Where they say, let's bring in a big name. Let's bring in Melo. Let's bring in Amari Stoudemire. Let's bring in, take your pick. Names that didn't work out. Eddie Curry didn't work out. Jerome James. I could go down the list and weird names that they brought in. It doesn't always work. They think that because big names come to New York, it's going to change the makeup. First of all, if you've never played in New York, you're in for a rude awakening. Think about it. Look at Lindor after year one with the Mets. Look at the rude awakening he got after year one. So if you've never played in New York, just because you're Tyreek Hill and you're probably the number one wide receiver in all the sport, it doesn't mean it's going to translate to playing with the Jets.
Yeah, and then with the Jets have dished out that much money for him as an extension, I mean, you would have been talking, let's put it this way, you would have been talking about more than $120 million if you're the Jets, because a lot of that money is taxed and stuff too. So you would be talking much more.
I was going to throw out that dumb argument that everyone makes from Miami to New York. Miami, there's no tax, like you just said. So he's obviously going to make more off the contract than he would in New York. He would have lost like half of it in New York.
Well, it's like 70 guaranteed at the signing, and then the other 50 comes along there. So, but we got a month to go now until the NFL draft, and that'll be the next big thing in football. And it'll be interesting for the two locals. I mean, for your Jets and my Giants, because we both have 4 picks inside the top 10. The Chiefs now have multiple first-round picks. That's what's going to be amazing about this draft. There are 6 or 7 teams that have multiple first-round picks. So it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we will obviously get into the draft a lot as we get a lot closer to April 29th. We are a month away from the draft. It's coming quick. Let me tell you, it is amazing. Yeah, we're through March already. I mean, the madness that this month created in the world of sports. For this show, 3 shows in, Nick, I mean, we've had so much to talk about. It's been great. I guess maybe I was a little psychic when I said, let's start March 15th for the show. Maybe maybe a lot of stuff will happen, and, well, it has. But, Nick, I want to thank you.
Yeah, it definitely changed over the years. Yep.
Definitely. So I want to thank you, Nick, for co-hosting with me for the first 3 shows. And no, folks, this won't be the last time you see Nick, I promise you. He's actually going to be back with us a week from Wednesday when we do our Game On baseball preview show. We'll get into a lot more of that on social media and on next Tuesday's show as well. So, Nick, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank Hank Indictor from Hitting for the Cycle and Big Blue Avenue, now officially here on Game On. He will join me again officially starting on Tuesday for episode number 4. Of course, folks, keep it locked in here, too. We got plenty of stuff here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. I mean, we've got a ton of shows. We got Beyond the Bench, which I think they're going to be talking about something that happened at an awards show on Sunday this week. So keep it locked in for that. Empty the Bench. We got a lot of shows. Inside the Numbers is coming along. If I miss anything, they can just have to help me. Living Life. The Hirsch Show, which, by the way, selfishly, personally, I want to say I watched the last episode of that. That was awesome with Phil Moore from Nick Arcade and You're On. I'm a huge game show fan, as people know. So watching that brought me back to my childhood days. So definitely go ahead and watch that and watch all of our shows. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Empty the Bench Podcast Network so you can catch all those shows and subscribe and ring that bell so you know what's coming up next. And, of course, social media for us personally, Game On ETB on Facebook and Twitter. So, Nick, thank you again very much. Folks, keep it locked in here, too. And we will talk to you again next Tuesday for episode 4 of Game On. Presented by Knack.
Yep. See you next week.